All right, so this is episode 1 of what I'm calling right now the Median Athlete Podcast, or the show, whatever, I haven't quite settled the name yet, but I guess I was thinking about this a while ago, and this name has kind of, well, I guess, a lot of different meanings to me. It's really geared for almost anybody in the middle. Like, for me right now, that's me. So doing a ton of training and working hard at being what I would call an athlete, kind of in middle age as well.
Mhm.
So us in our 30s, our 40s, we're fighting jobs and responsibilities and maybe a mortgage and kids and just life in general. And so we're having to balance a lot of things, and we're just putting in a lot of work, and we're still obsessed with it. Like, at least for myself too, still finding myself at the end of races, like still in the middle. So no matter which way I cut it, it was overall age group, gender, just the most average performance. And so I started thinking about it. It's like there's a lot of us out there that we're not pros. We're still trying to be
Yep.
active. We have different motivations for being active. And yeah, it's just kind of a place, for a platform for us to get together and talk. So the first guinea pig on the show is a colleague and dear friend of mine, Miguel Herrera. So, hey, Miguel.
Hello.
If you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself, give a little bit of background.
Yeah, so as Kasey said, my name is Miguel. I've been into sports, playing sports, watching sports, literally my entire life. There wasn't a time where I wasn't at least tangentially acquainted with some kind of sport. Growing up, it was always swimming, and then played organized sports in high school, and then kind of club sports in college. And then after post college, it was more not so much organized sports, but just trying to stay active. And then recently started to get into more endurance sports, which is actually kind of a new thing for me. But yeah, other than that, like Casey said, I'm middle aged. I got a wife and 2 daughters. Just having fun.
Yeah, I love it. So I guess go back to, high school. You talked about in swimming as
Mhm.
well. So talk about your swimming background.
Yeah,
Start from there.
I was in a house full of swimmers, which is kind of ironic because my dad and mom both basically knew how to swim, but they never swam competitively. I'm the youngest of three. Of two older sisters, and my eldest sister, Pam, she was the first to actually do organized swimming. So my father was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, so we kind of moved around a lot. And I was actually born in Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota. And I think it was there that Pam first joined the high school swim team. And then growing up, it was always summer was always swimming team, and I was fairly good at it. I never swam year round. That was kind of left to the middle sister Leticia. She actually was fairly successful. She made the senior circuit, swam competitively at Notre Dame, made their Hall of Fame for that. But for me, it was swimming in my age group. I was always did fairly well. And then that lasted through basically summer league, so through 16. And then in high school, it was unique. And I go back and forth. My parents didn't push me to be in one particular sport. They were very wanted to be well rounded. So it was a typical year for me was started with football, and then after football season was soccer, and then after soccer season was track and tennis, and then that was the school year. And then in the summer was summer league, and then swimming. And then once swimming was over, then it was back to football.
Clover.
Whereas, other like I had other friends that was like, or like with my sister, she swam, she was a swimmer. So it was short course, long course,
Just swimming.
full time swimming. I had friends
Okay.
who did the travel baseball type thing, and it was fall league, spring league. They were going
Just
everywhere.
all baseball.
Yeah, all baseball all the time. Where I was, whatever sport was in season, that's what I was playing.
Nice. So what positions did you play in football?
I was a running back and a linebacker. I
Nice.
so I grew up in Texas. After my dad retired, we went to Texas. Texas high school football, Texas Pee Wee football. It's a religion down there. I started playing in seventh grade, and I was a big guy. I weighed 225 pounds as a seventh grader, And
They just handed you the ball and said,
well,
run.
then they were like, we're going to make you a tight end and then or a defensive tackle. So that was like my 7th grade year. And I remember, growing up, like I said, I was a big kid and I got picked on a little bit for being, fat. And it was probably like 5th grade, 6th grade. We were playing soccer and there was like the fast kid and the ball was being kicked. And I remember running with him and getting to the ball before him. And it was like at that point, I was like, oh, maybe I'm actually like quick. So when it came time to play football and they were like, what do you want to play? I was like, I don't know. And they're like, okay, we're going to make you a tight end. So they like made me a tight end and a defensive tackle. And we were playing our rival Kirby and the running back like broke through and I like turned around and almost ran him down. And then it was like the next week, they're like, hey, maybe we should have him be a running back. So there was this hill that we used to train on. It was this really steep hill. It was completely dirt. And one of the training drills is you would have a partner and you would give them a piggyback ride and you would run up the hill. And I felt bad because there was like this small little 7th grader who was like maybe 80 pounds. And I'm this huge dude. And it was fine for me to give him a piggyback ride. Yeah. So
You had to switch out?
he made it up eventually. We got there. But so 8th grade, played linebacker, running back. That's when I actually transitioned full-time to running back. And that was fun. And then
Cool.
so the middle school was in the Judson School District. And Judson had a very storied high school football program in Texas. So for those of you who have seen Friday Night Lights, that was Odessa Permian. In 1988 was the year of the movie. Well, that was the 1988 Odessa Permian.
Oh, interesting.
And Converse Judson actually beat them in the semifinals, like in real life, to go on to the state finals. And the movie, it's a little bit massaged, but so Judson was one of the winningest programs in the state of Texas for high school football at the time. So that's where I went into middle school. So I was kind of like in that vein. And they teach you all the basics. And then so my parents didn't want me going to Judson for various reasons. So I went to like a smaller Catholic school. So the first day I show up, I had to go to practice late because I had some academics. I was in honor society. So honor society and football team doesn't really mesh a lot. So I was like late for good academic reasons. And they're like, well, what do you play? And I was like, well, I've played running back and linebacker. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, running back here. But what they didn't realize was all the Catholic school kids, they didn't play organized football outside of like Pee Wee football. Like the middle school in church don't have football programs. Where I had gone through the Converse Judson kind of like pipeline. So I already knew everything. And I remember when I went to high school, there was like varsity and JV. And basically it was varsity was everybody who could play. And JV was all the freshmen and like the people who couldn't play. And they put me on like a JV team, but it quickly became evident that like I knew what I was doing. So they like elevated me up and I got to play a little bit in high school. And it was a lot of fun. But I will say it was very different because the experience level wasn't there until obviously when you get to varsity play and other people, other schools, and that was fun. But yeah, in high school, what was fine was fun. Like I said, it was a smaller Catholic school. I probably did better than I would have if I would have gone through like the 5A6. So yeah, I did that. And then other things I did in high school was mainly like track and field. That was really what I excelled at. My senior year, I was ranked 10th in the state for the shot put. But I was also fast, right? So I remember we would go to these like podunk town, nowhere Texas, towns for track meet. And they would always have like the 4x100, right? Sprint relay. But they'd always have the big man relay. So these were, to qualify in the big man relay, you'd have to be either shot putter or discus thrower. And instead of a baton, you would generally carry a spare tire around. And then you always won like a dozen donuts or turkey legs or something. So I would line up to do that. And then I would line up for the actual sprint relay. So in track, I ran the 400 hurdles, the 100, the 4x100, and then I did shot and disc. And you do your qualifying for shot and disc, and they'll be like, "Oh, I can't throw right now. I gotta go qualify for the 100." And people are like, "What?
What?"
And I wasn't, I was okay at the 100. By means, I was not fast, but I was quick enough to
Okay.
qualify for the finals every once in a while. And that was fun. That was kind of
Nice.
a different aspect of track meet.
So, what was your favorite, I guess, event or category in track and field?
For me to be in, so my favorite all time, I'm at a track meet, the 4x400 relay. Like the open quarter
Okay.
is a beautiful race. I love watching the 4x4. For me to participate in, it was probably the shot put.
Nice.
The 400 hurdles is a grueling race. I did not like it, but I was good at it. You do what you do. I also liked kind of the experience of a track meet. There's always something going on, especially in high school,
Right.
when it's only a day. It's not a week long. Or when you get in a club, you'll have like qualifying day, finals day, and everything's kind of broken up. But in high school, it was all at the same time. You could, especially if you're an athlete, you have your badge and you can be on the infield and kind of see what's going on. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I just like kind of being the experience of
In the middle of it.
stuff kind of going around.
Yeah. Were you ever rushed, like you said a minute ago, of like, I got to go qualify for this? Were you ever feeling like really panicked and rushed to get to another event or anything like that?
The one thing was, and initially I was, I was very like, oh, I got to be here, I got to be here, I got to be here. But you quickly learn that the track events take precedent over the field events. Like you can always go jump 3 times in a row or vault 3 times in a row. You miss your start gun, that's it. So I quickly realized that get in the headspace, run well, and then go do your calm down, and then you can kind of switch mind frames, then go do the throwing. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I will say it was a lot of fun. And again, my experience probably was dictated by the fact that I went to a smaller Catholic school, because I actually won state my freshman year in shot put.
Is it in a certain division as well?
It was TAPS, Texas Association of Parochial
Private schools?
Okay. Yeah, so it was Catholic schools and private schools.
Nice.
But yeah, so I like won state my freshman year, and they're like, who's this guy? They're like, oh, he's a freshman. He's going to be here for 4 more years. And I ended up losing my senior year to my teammate, Anthony Alabi. He went on to play football for TCU and did track for TCU. So I was like, I think he actually got drafted by the Miami Dolphins. So I was like, yeah, okay. Alabi's, I'm fine with that.
That fits. Awesome. So I guess transition, like anything from college and 20s, kind of what were you focusing on more after?
Yeah, so then,
kind of you lose the access.
Yeah, so it was interesting. My freshman year, so I went to Baylor University in Waco for college. And my freshman year, they opened the SLC, the Student Life Center. So it was a brand new, gym, running track, swimming, whatever. But they had a climbing wall. It was at the time, everything's bigger in Texas, and especially when you build it brand new. So at the time, it was the largest indoor climbing wall in Texas. And they shaped it like a bear, so it was kind of like this. And it was then I got into rock climbing. So
nice. I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
Again, a bigger guy. People were like, you rock climb? I was like, yeah, it's whatever. So, you just have to have really good technique when you have a lot of mass. So rock climbed all throughout college. And it was actually, I did a lot of indoor stuff. And then when I graduated, I kind of got in a climbing group, and we started doing some outdoor stuff. And outdoor rock climbing is a trip. The other thing is I also kind of started rock climbing because I'm afraid of heights. And it was like one of those things like, conquer your fears. There are I can honestly say there are few times when I've been more scared than when there was a couple times when I was rock climbing and I'd reach for a hold or something happened and I'd fall. And strapped in, I'm totally fine. But when you're dangling and then you hear the rope creak, like all climbing knots are meant to underweight tight. And that, like, logically, that. But when you're
when it happens
in the air and you hear, you're just like, oh, let me get back on the wall. Let me get back on the rock. Yeah, it was also in college. I probably had one of more significant injuries. I was at just a random event. We were at a gymnasium, tumbling gym. And I was on the floor exercise, and they had these like barrels that we were jumping over. So I like went to run and I like planted and like went to jump. And I planted and I just kind of fell over. Well, it turns out my patellar tendon, so you have your quads, goes around your kneecap and it anchors on your tibia. The doctor
Yep.
said, oh, so I like fell over. So then they took me to the hospital. And the doctor comes in after getting my x-ray, and he like puts the x-ray on it, and he's like, lift your leg. I was like, so like, and he's like, you can't, can you? I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's because it's not attached anymore. And I was like, what kind of doctor says this? Well, it turns out the quad, like,
Bedside manner.
when I went to jump, the quad flexed and literally ripped my bone. So like, there was just, my kneecap was like up in my leg, and then
Oh my
and then
God.
like there was like this little bone fragment. So this is my sophomore year in college.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're gonna have to have emergency surgery probably tomorrow or the next day. And long story short, they had to like basically pull everything down and staple it on. And I, screw it into the front. And I remember I was being wheeled out of the hospital. I was trying to, and my friend had like a little Civic or a Kia or something, like a real small 2-door, basically front seat and no back seat. And I'm trying to get in, and there's the nurse. He's like holding my leg, and I'm like, all right, I can get in because I've been rock climbing, right? So I like put my
Right.
hand on the dashboard, and I put my other hand on the seat behind me, and I kind of lift myself up, and I'm like putting myself in. And the guy was like, oh, this guy's a pretty big guy. Let's like give him some more room. And he hit the lever for the seat. And the seat,
The one that you're holding
the
on
one I'm
to.
holding on to. So the seat slams down. And
Oh
my
God.
leg hits the B pillar. And apparently I let out this like shriek and then like passed out. The next thing I know, I'm like home. Yeah, so my dad came out from San Antonio. He went home, had knee surgery. I was on crutches for like 3 months, and then I walked with a cane for another 8. And it was like
Wow.
severe rehab. I still have a scar,
That's a
like
long
a
recovery.
significant scar on my knee. But it was like one of those things that like I wanted to get back on the wall. Like I wanted to get back into it.
Yep.
And it was like every time my roommates, like they would literally hide my climbing shoes. Like especially when it got to the point where like I hadn't yet been cleared, but I was walking fine. I'm like, I could do this. They're like, no, we're not going to let you like
This is an intervention.
exactly. Like I just want to do something. Like no, you're not going to hurt yourself. Like the attendants at the climbing wall wouldn't sign up. They're like, nope, we're not letting you on.
Your picture's on the side of the
Do not
wall.
hurt
Like
this
if
guy.
you see this guy, not let him climb.
But I even see
That's
I
awesome.
even see that now. As I get older, I'll strain my calf or strain my hamstring or pull my hamstring or something, and I'm like, okay, I know I shouldn't. I'm only going to go for like a mile run just to get some cardio, and then you're out there and you're like,
Yep.
oh, this feels good. Like maybe I'll go 2 miles. Maybe I'll go another mile, and you're like, no, like I have to like self-govern. Like no, like don't hurt yourself even more, because now where when you're young you hurt yourself and it takes you're out for a week or 2 or maybe a month, and now it's just like, all right, well it's now we're entering the 3rd month, and I'm like still nursing this thing. Like where's my icy hot? Gotta get gotta warm up, gotta properly stretch.
Yeah, that's been challenging for me too. It's like one of the motivations for the podcast too is we're fighting age, and we're fighting like we have desk jobs a lot of times. We're sitting for half the day, and we're just normally tight, and it seems a lot easier to get injured,
Yeah.
right? Everyone can come on here and talk about their injury too. A lot of this used to be athletes in some aspect as well, and it's very easy for our identity to get wrapped up into our sports. When you get injured or when you get sick, that can really interfere with who you are as a person, and that can take a mental toll. So yeah, getting someone's perspective on their entire career, their identity can completely change in a diagnosis or a big injury. Like we can always like learn on what to like how to address them, what's working for others, what's not working. And just like you say, I start to feel something in my legs or like in one of my calf muscles or my knee, or just like, okay, is this something? Am I gonna get taken out for
Am
a
I
month, or is this
sore?
gonna go away in a couple of
Or am I
days? Yeah,
getting hurt?
am I gonna regret this? Can I keep running? Should I hold off? And then you get with the pressure of a run or like a race you've signed up
Yeah.
for. You've got to train. For me, like with the marathon, is okay. I've got this marathon I've signed up
Mm-hmm.
for, especially if it's the first one or something. Like you've put a lot of pressure on yourself
Mm-hmm.
to finish it, and you just ignore all the warning signs of like, hey, you've got an injury coming up, or just there's the mental game
Yeah.
as well of
And it's a little bit of a letdown. So I did run a half marathon, but I had signed up for two prior to that, where I went through the training and I had gotten to the point where I was physically fit enough to run a half marathon, and then I would hurt my leg and I couldn't run it. Like it wasn't for lack of training. And one thing I do now religiously is if I'm going to train for a particular distance, like I will find a training plan because I can't figure that out on my own. And
right.
overtraining is definitely a thing. And so I'd follow that training plan, and then you get hurt like a month before the race, and you're just like, and then it's this. Should I try and risk it? No, because pulling a hamstring is bad, but you can definitely hurt yourself. And if you're not,
Yep,
especially, and I'm sure you know, at these distances, if you don't have proper form, it can hurt other things.
it
If you're
adds up.
nursing a knee, all of a sudden your hips are now messed up.
Yep. Yeah, and for me, my injury has been posterior tibialis tendon dysfunction, which is the tendon that holds up the medial arch of your foot kind of loses its strength.
Yeah.
And so and that your arch starts to
Mm-hmm.
collapse over time. And if you don't rehab the tendon well, if you don't give it enough good attention, all that dysfunction travels all the way up your chain. So it starts with your foot, it goes travels up your affects your calf, your plantar fascia as well, your knee, your hip, and it just wrecks your entire chain all the way up. So especially now, it's trying to avoid surgery
Yeah.
and trying to balance staying active, hitting your goals if you have them, and then also being able to stay in the game. So that's been tough to
Yeah,
balance.
that's it. I agree. Trying to stay active is definitely like that's the name of the game, right? We do
Yep.
this because it makes us feel good, and the reason it makes us feel good is because we're active and it leads to better health, both physically and mentally, and everything. And it doesn't help. Literally, doesn't help you if you get hurt and you can't then stay active, right? You want to push yourself, but also you want to make sure that you continue to be able to push yourself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so let's talk about current phase of life.
Yeah.
So I actually had to change my shirt earlier because, like, I bet you he's going to show up with that shirt on because I was wearing that shirt all
Oh, that's
day.
one.
Yeah. It's like, okay, change it to a different one. That was right. Yeah, so I see River Bluff. I've got Music City Tri shirt on. We're doing triathlons right
Yep.
now. So talk to me about, if I remember correctly, you mentioned right before the Music City Tri, that was both of our, I think our first
Yep.
tries, is that you wanted to do this for a long
Yeah,
time.
so I had a
I can't remember how
friend.
many
I
years.
had a friend in high school, Erica Salinas. She, on a whim, got into triathlons. I had already been a cyclist at this point in my life. This was probably 2 or 3 years after college, into my young adulthood. So I'd already been a cyclist for a couple of years and been a swimmer all my life. So it's two of the three, right? But
Yep.
was not a runner.
A long distance, because
Yeah,
apparently you did track
yeah. I
too,
was a
right? So,
sprinter. Give me 100
yep.
meters, give me 400 meters, I will go as fast as. But I did not know the word pace. Like I was in soccer,
Just as fast as you
so
can.
you run a lot in soccer, but you don't run a long time continuously for soccer. So I never did one because I didn't think I could do a 5K. And I say that now, and that is just I find the more that I run, the less big deal it is to run distances. And I can see where people are like, oh, you're going to go, you ran a 5K or oh, you did 10K. You're like, yeah. And they're like, wow. And you're like, it's really not that big a deal. Like, so I never did one. And Erica, did one. This was probably 2003, 4. She did the capital of Texas City Tri. So it was in Austin, and it was great. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to, next try you do, Erica, I'm in. And I would train with her. And then I would never sign up. So I was like, I'll get around to it next year. I'll get around to it next year. Fast forward 20 something years, and I just finished running the half marathon. I did one last year. And then every year I've gotten accustomed to doing the hot chocolate run in February here in Nashville.
Yep.
And so I was training for that. And I was like, my knee was still kind of hurting from the half. And I was like, basically, like coming to the realization, look, you're getting older. Maybe running 13 plus miles is not like the best for you to do. Why don't you, we're going to back it down. We're going to do so I put a cap on myself of only doing 10Ks. But I still wanted to do things that took, a significant amount of time. So I was like, well, maybe I'll start doing triathlons. And I was like, well, I always kind of wanted to do a triathlon. I still have my road bike. And I will say, for people who are trying to get into triathlons, the people who I talk to, who I'm trying to convince now to join us, it's one of two things, right? It's, I'm not good in the water. And that is a very fair point. Like open water swimming is not in a pool. And there is a definite confidence you have to have in the water. And two is you need a bike. And you can ride your $29.99 Walmart special bike.
You can ride any bike.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. It won't get stolen.
Exactly. Next to that $12,000 tri bike. But there's kind of a barrier to entry. And I already had the bike and I already knew how to swim. And I knew at this point in my life, I already knew how to run. Like I knew I could run.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, let's do this. So signed up for the Music City Tri and never looked back. This is so much fun. Like it's an ability, it's a way for me to compete, not really compete, but compete with myself, my own time, relatively low impact, swimming and biking, no impact, and then 5K, 10K, whatever. And still be able to have a motivation to get up in the mornings, random Tuesday morning in August, when it's almost 90 degrees at 8 in the morning. You're like, oh God, do I really want to get out and exercise? Like, yes, I got a race coming up. Got to do it.
Right.
And it's been nice. It's motivation to stay active. And I found the tri community is and I knew this, is very welcoming. Like everybody who I have interacted with, either racing or training with, all just having fun. And some are competing, yes. Some are actually up there for medals. Oh, yeah. And the River Bluff Tri was the Tennessee State Championship Tri that we didn't know about, found out during the award ceremony. But others are, there's that 87-year-old grandma who's power walking her 10K for her Olympic, and you're just like, that's what I want to do. Like when I'm 80 plus, I want to be doing this.
Be able to do that.
Like I will be walking, but I walk now because I hurt my hamstring and I just need to finish.
Right. That's one thing I like about triathlon so much too, is that just like with long distance running, you can compete against yourself. You can compete against a lot of people. Everyone has different goals, especially with this phase of life too. I would love to be on the podium, but I would have to get a whole lot faster in all three
phases.
In order to do that. And, I'm willing to put in the work, but it takes time and I can't get hurt. But, I can still finish. That can be the goal, is just slowly increment up the distances or make a big jump if you feel comfortable. And just finishing is the goal. If you start doing the same distances, then you can just try to beat your last time. And especially with the bike, like there's a whole other layer of mechanical issues that can pop up.
Yeah.
So even sometimes the race is out of your control. If you get a flat in the middle of the race, you may not reach.
You're not going to PR when you're flat. I would think. Some might. But it also, my daughter started showing interest in doing a triathlon. She did one a couple of years ago. There was a kids tri that they ran out in Nolensville, and she loved it. And I was talking to her recently, and I was like, "Is this something you want to do?" Because there's that whole bike situation. Right? If you run and do this, we will need to get you a real bike. A big person bike. And I think she wants to do it. And that'd be good because then I could it's something that she and I can share. She will dust me. She runs cross country and she's in 8th grade and we used to run together. And then at one point I was like, just go. Like, I know you want to run with me, but you're not training. Just go. And then she goes. And it'll be fun to share that with her if she chooses to join. But there is a sacrifice when it comes to time, right? Because training takes time. When the race takes a couple hours, training should take at least that much, if not more. So it's how do you work that in to the daily grind between work and spending time with your family.
All of the responsibilities. Yep. Yeah. So talk about your training style. Like how do you have a plan? Do you just get up and pick? How do you train for a try, and what keeps you motivated, and talk about that?
Yeah. So with the try, when I'm training for a try, obviously I mix it up a little bit. Try and do 50-50, either bike or run. The swimming I'm not too worried about. And also it's a little harder to, I'm not part of the Y or anything. So the lap pool that I use for training is my neighborhood pool, which kind of works out a little bit because there's not lap lanes. Residents have specifically asked to put in a lane so people could do laps, and that was vetoed by the non-swimming residents. So when I swim, it's just like open swimming, which is kind of great for triathlete swimming because it's like combat swimming. It's not uncommon for me to be doing my laps, and all of a sudden a random middle schooler jumps in because he's catching a football and you have to get out of the way. So that's a little bit of combat swimming that you get used to. But then other than that, it's just knowing your distance, working up to a distance, and then at some point combining them. Before the last try, I would do mini tries on Saturday morning. So get out to the pool early enough so there wasn't too many people, take my bike, do the swim, transition with my bike, ride around, go home, do my second transition in my garage so I could leave my bike there, and then run to the pool, and then get my car and drive back.
Nice. One thing I like about tries is I can just get up, and every day is different as far as schedule goes. Not every day, but most days. So it's, what do I want to do today? My minimum goal is do something every day for the most part. But then it's okay, well, I'm nursing this knee a little bit, so let's go swim or let's go bike. So it's being able to pick something from the different disciplines, or let's go strength train, or let's work on mobility.
Let's do stretching today because no one ever does stretching, and for being honest, probably work on a stretching day every once in a while.
Yeah. So one hack that we've done is we had a huge ottoman in our living room. So I took that out and then set down some Japanese tatami mats. And so while we're watching TV, I'm on the floor, doing stretches and just kind of doing random mobility stuff just to stay active and find just a little bit of time to work on some things. That's been handy.
Is your family morning people? Are they early risers?
Our toddler is, and this
just wakes up whenever.
So when days when my wife's out of town, I don't really get to move much unless she goes after I drop her off at daycare. So then I may have an hour window after that before work starts to get something in. And so that's where a little bit of pressure, and I can get grumpy if I'm not training. I've found that either if I'm overtraining or if I'm not training, I can take some mental toll.
Needs to find the middle ground.
That's right. Yeah. So if I don't get anything in that hour, then, I'm toast until she goes to sleep. So it is definitely, it's more challenging to get the training in. Sometimes if there's a gap in my day, then maybe I can go to the pool or something, get something in. But most of the time it's get something in early in the morning, or if I get relief in the evening.
Yeah.
So
my family are definitely not early risers. So Saturday, Sundays, if I'm trying to do something, I'll get up in the morning, go do my workout, and get home.
Nice.
Sometimes before anybody even wakes up.
That is nice.
Which is nice because I don't feel like I'm sacrificing too much in that other than sleep, which is important. And then during the week, what I'll try and do is my wife and our eldest are out of the door to school before I even wake up. Then I'll wake up my youngest, get her ready, get her on the bus, and then try and get a small workout before work. So trying to fit that into the schedule without having to sacrifice too much time when you're missing family time or whatever.
Yep. And triathlon is typically I guess considered a solo sport. It's really just you,
Yep.
right? But there are triathlon communities in the area. You and I like to train together. Like, do you prefer to train solo for the most part? How do you balance training with other people versus yourself? Like, what do you prefer?
Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure that out if I'm being honest. I do enjoy training with people. Growing up, I was always part of team sports. Even swimming is a solo sport, but you train with a bunch of people. My hesitation with, training with having a training partner is I don't want to impede their training. Like, for instance, I would never run with anybody because I don't run fast. And I don't want my training partner to wait on me because that doesn't help them, right? So if I do run with people, I'm generally like, yeah, just go ahead. We know the route. Go do what you need to do, and then we'll meet up and
Meet up later.
after. Riding's a little easier because I think the delta between good riders, okay riders, and great riders is a little more compact than a good runner and an okay runner. So doing bike rides, I love to be with people. Also, it's kind of a safety thing, right? You hurt yourself on a run, you can just stop and limp back home. Have a crash on a bike is a little more significant. So I will say I have a Garmin watch. I had to turn on the live link when I started riding. So at a minimum, my wife knows where I'm at. And if I do have a crash, there's like an incident detection and we'll call her. So that's a safety thing. But, as far as training with people, I think it's nice to train with people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for me, I will not go cycling by myself. Like, I've done it a couple times and I've hated it every time. This isn't for me. I got an indoor trainer for if I need to just get some miles in just to just get used to it or build up some VO2 or something. But I do want to get on the trace, but as far as going solo,
yeah. So when I started cycling, I was always solo.
Okay.
And there's a certain peace and calm when you're in South Texas, and the next person is probably like 10 miles from you, and you're just going.
Yeah.
Not the safest thing. I do remember one time my wife she got her graduate degree in wildlife sciences, and she was doing her fellowship at this place called the Welder Wildlife Foundation, and it was just outside Sinton, Texas, which is nowhere, Texas. So it was like a working range / research facility, and they had a herd of cattle, and they would periodically move them around. And I was riding in the back loop, and I have aero bars on my bike, right? So they look like horns. And I asked specifically where the cattle were, and they said they were back here. Well, it turns out they had got moved that morning, and I was riding, and I look up, and there's this 2,000-pound bull staring me down. And I can only assume he saw the aero bars because he started. Well, I learned pretty early on in my cycling career, someone told me always have a water bottle for water and a water bottle for animals. You're like going along, and sometimes a dog comes up, and you just take it and you just give him a little squirt just to oh, you can get up.
Yeah.
Well, I have my water bottle. And there's this bull just chunking at him. And the fence is probably 80 yards, 70 yards. And I just throw it down in the gear and just take off. And the bottle hits him. And he was like, huh? And he gave me just enough that I got to the fence, unclipped, threw my bike over, jumped the fence, and this bull was coming. And it's sometimes being alone in North Texas, riding your bike, but they make for good stories.
That's a hell of a story.
Yeah, so to Tennessee.
So that's awesome. So you've done two tries so far, right? So both sprint, conveniently enough, Music City and then River Bluff. We can talk about either one. What was your favorite? What did you enjoy? What you didn't like?
Yeah, I preferred the River Bluff try to the Music City try. The Music City try was fun. It was my first one. It was a lot of fun. I'll probably do it every year, if I'm being honest. It's just a lot downtown, which has its own niceties. Riding down a highway was kind of cool, but it wasn't the best maintained. There were some
Yeah,
potholes.
it was very bumpy.
But also just kind of, I think, if I'm being honest, like not being in the city when I'm working out.
Yeah.
The River Bluff try, the run was, through kind of a wooded park. And that's much nicer run than like random side street downtown Nashville. Like they were both the same river. I mean, it was both the Cumberland.
Different
Different
temperatures.
temperatures, yeah. It was a little colder in Music City one. But whatever. You jump in, you go, you're out in 2 minutes, you're fine.
Music City was my first as well. And coming from a non-swim background, it was cold and I barely trained. Like, I didn't even know technique yet. Like, I'm still getting better, but my head was out of the water almost the whole time because it was like I was just learning and it was so cold.
Yeah, I think it
Anything
was
that I had
swimsuit
recently
legal, like
learned,
wetsuit legal at that time.
right?
Yeah.
Anything that I had recently learned as far as technique goes, just as soon as I hit that water, just went out the window. It's just, and that's been the hardest thing for me for open water swimming too. Is that pool swimming, lap swimming, and just trying to build up the distance and training for it is kind of like running on the treadmill versus running outside. Like, yeah, it translates some, but as soon as you get in that water,
All bets are on.
during the race, you get good
And
luck.
it's also, when you're in a pool swim, you have a little bit of a guide rail, right? Like you have, and then at the bottom of the pool, you have your line, and you can just follow that back and forth,
Yep.
back and forth, back and forth. We're open water swimming.
Yep.
Like there's a buoy out there, and you swim, and at some point you got to look up and make sure you're still like aligned to that buoy. Instead of like going back and forth, you're kind of like doing this. If you're
and you're running into people, like that was something I had to get used to, of playing footsie with me running into people. It's like that would throw me off. And so someone who's new with technique too, and this is not to scare anybody, but this is kind of the reality of like just what I experienced of I'm trying to get better at swimming. I'm then employing it on the race in the open water swim because I'm not doing much open water. But then if I run into somebody, it interrupts my
your rhythm, your thought process.
My rhythm. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I've got to just like recontain myself, get back, because at some point I went vertical because I ran into somebody. So now I've got to
vertical
like get back.
Foot vertical.
Head vertical. So yeah, I do agree. Like you mentioned earlier, that the open water swim, it can be very intimidating, especially like I grew up swimming too, but it wasn't competitive. It was just like in the pool or in the lake. It wasn't learning like how to swim properly to reduce your drag and, how to breathe properly to actually compete and be efficient, really. Like that's the main goal, is just to swim efficiently. If your head's out of the water, you've got you're creating a lot of drag with your leg. And so you're just fighting harder than you should. You need to, and learning how to just learn how to do that in your 30s is it's a lot harder to pick up.
That is true.
So we talked about injuries. How are you doing? Anything special with current injuries that you're dealing with, or like any special tactics that you're employing?
No, I've just been now to the point where I have a little bit of aches and pains, but I think those are just kind of standard at this point. I've been trying to be more proactive with my stretching routine. At some point along the way, my sister got me a Theragun for Christmas. So I find myself using that a lot more.
Nice.
In the recent months than I used to. And then I always have my cadre of medicine balls, stretching rubber bands, stretching tubes or whatever, just trying to keep mobility and everything limber.
Work some stuff out.
Trying to prevent those injuries. And then I think I might just put stock in icy hot at this point. Like buy it by the tub.
So at the end of the marathon, one thing I did not realize that I needed to train for was getting an ice bath. So that was the point where I needed an ice bath, and I needed it now, but I'm not prepared to be in an ice bath.
Yeah, that is a mental test.
Yep. I failed. Yeah. So we've got a couple more things to talk about, and then we can wrap up. So gear, let's talk about whatever you want to focus on.
Yeah.
Like favorite goggles, favorite shoes, bike, whatever you want to talk
about. Having grown up being an athlete, I've always been very particular about my shoes. Like, I remember
Okay.
when my wife, when we were dating at the time, I mentioned I had off the cuff said I needed to buy new shoes, and I was going to go shoe shopping like that weekend. And she was like, "Oh, I'll go with you." And I was like, like I'm okay,
It's gonna
but
be a
it's
while.
going to be a while. She's like, "That's fine." And then, sure enough, like that was the only time she's ever gone shoe shopping with me because I try on all the shoes. I walk around. I heard somewhere along the line, you put money in things between you and the ground, right? You put money in shoes, mattresses, and car tires. And it's true. I have a very wide foot, so my toe box needs to be big. I used to wear New Balance. I've since migrated over to Brooks. Brooks are great. Love Brooks. But it's still like I'm still very particular because I did make the mistake. I know where Brooks Ghosts, and I think I needed new shoes, and they were out, so I switched over to the Adrenalins and ended up
Okay.
messing up my knee. It
Yeah.
may have not been the shoes, but I went back to the Brooks, and I haven't had any problems since. So Brooks Ghosts for the win. um,
Yeah. Shoes can really change how you
mhm.
run, especially like the adrenalines are kind of help with
Yep.
overpronation as well. So if you don't have that
So
issue, then
the reason I got them is because I used to pronate
okay.
significantly. Like I would, the last thing I do with my old shoes is I look at the wear pattern. And for Christmas several years ago, my in-laws got me a heart rate monitor for the Garmin watch, and with that, apparently it's got accelerometers on it. And I got a bunch of data on, and I at the time I was favoring my left side like significantly.
Oh, yeah.
Like I think it was like by like 5 or 6% to the left. It was
Wow. Okay.
significant. And so I
Yeah.
have since like evened that out. But it was around that time that I noticed that I was overpronating. My wear patterns were wrong. I was favoring my left side. So I tried to adjust that with the adrenalines, and then it just did not work well.
Gotcha.
And then bike, I have a Trek 1000 I bought in 2002. I'm looking for a new bike. I'm not particularly married to that one. It's just what I've had. But yeah, the really other than my shoes and my watch, Garmin, whatever, I'm not particularly brand loyal to anything other than that. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, Brooks and Garmin.
Awesome. Brooks and Garmin. Yeah. So right there with you on Brooks. So I ran my first half and my first full in Brooks. I did the Journalin GTS 23s for the full
Mm-hmm.
marathon, mainly because I tried switching to more minimalist shoes and zero drop shoes and got really injured. So I went back to the Brooks,
Mm-hmm.
which have a high drop. So it kind of gave my calves a break. And then, so, with a high drop shoe, normally all those forces, the muscles that get worked, that tends to go up the chain.
Yep.
So like into your hip, hamstrings, versus zero drop is more in your foot and your calves. So that's always something to, finding the right shoe that works for you. Even switching them up can help with injury prevention. I'm trying that a little bit, but still I'm in like the 5 millimeter
Mm-hmm.
drop range right now with a Topo Athletic, because they have a wide toe box. Like that's their non-negotiable. It's just
Yeah.
a wide toe box. I do Koros for the watch. We'll talk. I think we'll have another session at some point and talk nutrition or something. But
All Mountain Dew
this
all the time.
that's one thing I don't like about training so much is that I can't stop
Yeah.
eating. Like, and I'm working on that, but it feels like I'm hungry all the time, no matter how much I eat. So that's a balancing game.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And I've been trying to cut back myself. But it's tough. It's so tough. You go out
Yeah.
and burn thousands of calories in the morning. And you're like, I'm so
Yep.
hungry. And you're like, well, it just burned like 1,500 calories. I can have another thing of almonds or.
So yeah, what's on the calendar next for triathlon?
So
You
nothing
think?
on the books for the triathlon as of right now. I'm currently training for an MS ride, and that's in October. So I've transitioned mainly to lengthening my ride stamina. I've got a buddy who's got a multiple sclerosis, and so I will say He was a collegiate athlete. He was a football player, and he found out that he got diagnosed with MS when he was working for West Virginia football. And he's, my age. And he's,
Yeah.
to look at him, he is perfectly fit. You wouldn't think of it until you see him in his scooter. And there are times when, like, I'll hit a wall or I don't want to get up in the morning to train. And I will say Brett is a very big motivation for me because there are those who can't. And, just appreciating, yeah, I get hurt, but I can get better. So, yeah, so I'm doing that MS ride. And then I'll probably look forward to, I think tri-season's over, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if there's any more on the docket. So we might be.
There are some, I can get a list of ones that are around, but it's like in our little radius, there's nothing. But you'd have to go to
Hawaii.
North Carolina or some coastal areas to get some more tries in, and the season will start early. I think like Texas at least starts in April. There may be some other ones, but it won't be long till I'm trying to get Miguel to do a half Ironman in Chattanooga next year. We'll see. That's on my list. I have sprints. Making the jump from sprint to half Ironman, 70.3 distance is a big jump. At the bike shop, I ran into a guy who said he doesn't like Olympic distance because at the distances that the Olympic does, he'd rather just be doing what is a half. He'd rather just.
I've already run 6 miles. Why don't I just double that?
That's right. He basically said
another
that.
7?
So, yeah, and like you said earlier, for some people, 5K isn't a big deal. We've slowly built up to these larger distances, and to others, a full marathon isn't a big deal. So it's definitely a wide range of ability, and there's always seems to be always someone faster, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so MS ride, and then probably we'll shut it down for the winter. Try to get a trainer so I can do some stuff inside or go to the gym to keep the cardio up. And then in February is the hot chocolate run, and that'll probably start up the next season, right? That'll probably be the first of many races, runs, triathlons for next season.
Awesome. Thanks for being the first guest on the.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be active and have stuff to work towards. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, it's just, I will say, for those of you who are older in life, I didn't get into this until I was in my mid-40s, so it's not too late to start. If you want to try, just go out and start doing it.
Love it. All right. Thanks, Miguel. Thanks, buddy.
See ya.